Welcome to the Gold Standard here from the 440 Sports Network and, of course, partnered with Lower Broad Hockey. I am Braden Gall, and you can get to me on social media platforms at Braden Gall.
I'm Emma Lingan. You can get to me at Emma_Lingan on the platforms that people are still using, but on Blue Sky, which I am not using yet. I'm there. I just haven't used it, but it's just at Emma Lingan because they don't allow me to do underscores.
Which is okay. I think underscores are weird, but I know it's part of your brand, so there you go. But Blue Sky's fun. It's a nice place, and I say, I joke about like the platform, but like it does feel like old Twitter where you can just have a conversation about the things that you care about. You can just be a person again, which is quite nice. And of course, we are brought to you on the Gold Standard by Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. We'll tell you more about those great and amazing local businesses later on. If you'd like to get into the comment section and be a part of the show, that is why we are live, is because we want to be able to interact with you guys. And we do appreciate each and every one of you for jumping into the comment section. I get Preds comments, Emma, from a particular listener, and I'm not calling this person out at all. I get Predators commentary on our football product, which, by the way, you can check out across the 440 Sports Network on all platforms. Myself and Paul Kaharski, as well as myself and Nick Suss from the Tennessean covering the Titans. And I get one guy every single Monday, Emma, that jumps in, and his name is like Predemption. So you guys probably know who that is. And he's just always bringing a little bit of Preds content into a Paul Kaharski podcast, which if you've ever met Paul is hilarious to me. I think it's hilarious. So there you go.
I mean, I think it's the trifecta of suck right now. If you're a fan of the Preds, the Titans, and Nashville SC, it's not going well for anyone right now.
So. All three have changed coaches in the last 18 months, and all three have no optimism about their futures, long term and short term. It doesn't mean that's not going to change for football, for soccer, for hockey. It could change. So, and we're going to talk about that because, when Jeremy K. Gover, It's All Your Fault podcast, check it out, Emma and Jeremy. When Jeremy K. Gover is willing to have a conversation about a coach being on the hot seat, you know it's time to have the conversation. I know Adam went in pretty hard on the Gold Standard Extra, which of course is only an exclusive for Lower Broad Hockey subscribers on Sundays and Mondays, so make sure you check that out. And that's why we ask you to subscribe to that platform. You can get Emma's weekly newsletter. I've also got a story up today about Roman Josi's sort of travel habits as they head on the road. They flew out yesterday, the Nashville Predators, on Tuesday. So we will get to all of that coming up on the show today. But yeah, it's a fascinating time. Fascinating time to be a Nashville sports fan. That is for sure. There's Ben. Good morning, says Benjamin. Good to see you, buddy. Do appreciate you chiming in. So there you okay. So coming up, I've also had a chance to talk with. Do you know how to say his name yet? Justus Annunen.
Yes. Well done.
Yeah, see, I got it right. All right. He was available to the media. He had his first practice on Monday. We had a chance to talk with him for about 5 minutes. I'm going to post that entire video on Lower Broad Hockey's chat there, so you can see it there. I'll play a clip of it today on the show a little bit later on. Sort of his perspective on Pekka Rinne from the same town in Finland, and certainly the Finnish history in this organization. So you'll hear from him, see him if you're watching. And I think sort of what's the strategy here for the Predators from a goaltending standpoint, I think actually portends a little bit of the strategy for the entire organization moving forward. If you're trying to get into Barry Trotz's psyche, I think I've got some insight for you a little bit later on in the show. So we'll also, optional practice report. Optional practice seems to be a hot topic, Emma, on the Twitters.
Hotter than it needs to be, y'all.
There you have it. So lots of stuff coming up today on the show. Do you know who won the championship, though? First of all, how was your Thanksgiving, by the way? How was it all?
My Thanksgiving itself was lovely. A couple of my friends and I did our own low-key dinner. We each contributed a side, and it was very nice. And then we went to see Wicked. The rest of the weekend was less than lovely. But what? anyone who is a subscriber, anyone who's a subscriber and got my belated edition of last week's newsletter knows that I had a rough weekend because had to do with fire alarms and a highly anxious dog and
more fire alarms.
Okay. Yes. And I was like, look, when the guy came to address the issue, I was like trying not to be a dick because I'm like, this is not this man's fault. I'm like, didn't you guys just check these like 2 weeks ago? And now it's beeping at me. Of course, at 3:40 in the morning, because these things never happen in the middle of the day.
Did you try checking the battery?
Yes.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Yes, my affectionately known Mr. Lingan came over and tried checking the battery, and that just made the alarm angry.
Oh, okay, Mr. Link. Got it. I
Yeah.
did. It's the first. It's the first time that I think I've ever felt like a dad on the show. I
Well,
apologize to you. I apologize.
you referred to my significant other as Mr.
That's
Lingan
right.
one
That's
time,
right.
so
Well,
that's normally I think of Mr. Lingan as my father, but
that's what I thought too. I was like, man, that's a long trip for a fire alarm.
he would be like, absolutely not.
Mr. Brazil and Kevin, how are you guys doing? Well, so first of all, I can't believe you mentioned Wicked. I know we're going to talk hockey. That's what we do, but we're also having a little fun today on the show since the Preds are not very good at hockey. So I think I chose, some of this was earning points on my part, but I chose because I knew my wife and my daughters wanted to see Wicked really badly. I've seen this whole hype about Gladiator 2 and Moana 2 and all these movies that are coming out, and I'm just like, all right, the last time we had this kind of hype around movies, it was Barbenheimer, and both of them ended up being spectacular. So I was like, all right, I'll give it a chance. I have no desire to see Wicked, but I know the family does. It was Wednesday before Thanksgiving. The wife is off. I kind of cut out early and got all my work done, and the kids are off school for way too long for Thanksgiving, of course. Thank God they're back in school. But we go see it. And first of all, I do appreciate being able to drink a couple beers while watching movies these days. I think that's great. It's a great change that society has made. I walked out of there. First of all, my 6-year-old was pretty bored after about like an hour, which
It was a long movie.
Respect, because I was falling asleep after about an hour. Like the talent is extraordinary. The songs are like, everybody's extremely talented. The production quality is like extraordinary. But I walked out of there and I was like, Haley, I don't think anything happened in the movie. Like, what happened? Like, it was a story about a mean girl and a nerd in a college dorm for like 2 hours. What are we doing? And there at the very end, my 6-year-old got interested because things happen at the end. I got interested at the end, and I will not be seeing it again.
Well, but it's part 1. Part 2 comes out next year.
Okay. And everybody says part 2 is way worse, but everybody says things happen in part 2.
Well, yeah. I mean, because like you said, not a whole lot. It is interesting that they turned part 1, like basically act 1 of a musical, into a 3-hour movie. I'm
so
like,
bad. So bad.
But I thought it was incredible. Production value was excellent. The fact that they do all of the singing live, I think, was especially impressive. And yes,
I would rather watch the Predators for 3 hours. That's how bad the movie was.
Wow. I think that you're going to get some hate for saying that. But I mean, at least the performance in Wicked was, respectable.
I also, much like Jonathan Marshall show and Steven Stamkos on 5 on 5, I also couldn't understand anything that Ariana Grande was singing. I could not understand. It was so high pitched. Anyway,
see that you do sound like a dad.
I know,
saying that.
No, I love vocals. I can listen to. Man, this is Nashville. I got great music taste. Come on now. I like Ariana Grande. She's fine. I just couldn't understand anything she was singing. It was too high pitched. Anyway, okay. All right, let's hear from Roman Josi here. Enough about us and our Thanksgiving plans. But I did win the championship because Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue made Thanksgiving so easy and a huge success. The food, I went and got it Wednesday. We reheated it on Thursday, had my parents in, had my sister-in-law and brother-in-law in. Fantastic, had fancy sparkling rosés or whatever the hell Sinkers Beverages told me to go buy that paired with the turkey. Everybody loved it. Huge hit. I was the big winner. I didn't do anything. I just let Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue do all the work. That is why you go shop at good local businesses, because they take care of you. All right. So I chatted with Roman for about 5 minutes, sort of exclusively after practice on Tuesday, right before they jumped on the plane. I'll talk a little bit about sort of his road trip tendencies and what does it mean. I know you've been on a lot of road trips. I was interested to hear, like, what does it actually look like on a tangible level when they are on a long road trip like the Canadian swing they just went on? Like, what is that? Like, everyone talks about the bonding and the time, and you and I have talked about it. And I wanted to know from a player's perspective, like, what does that actually mean? Are y'all like sitting at dinner talking about the power play? Like, what does that actually mean? I doubted that part, but we'll see. And we'll talk to Roman and I'll explain my conversation. The story's up on Lower Broad Hockey right now. But here was Roman sort of in a scrum. This is after practice, talking to all of the media about sort of where the team is at right now.
Yeah, it's definitely been a bit of a grind, of course. I mean, obviously not to start with honor, but I feel like our game is getting better. You know, I think last week we played some better games and obviously didn't get the outcomes. But I think, yeah, we gotta focus on our game and focus on the process and getting our game to be better. And I thought we took a step last week.
What do you think is the key to kind of the breakthrough that you guys are waiting for?
I think just playing more connected. I feel like we've been doing that. I feel like we've a lot of the games early in the year and first 20. I feel like we had some good stretches and then a lot of bad stretches and just didn't play that connected. It was it felt like you were kind of on island sometimes, and I feel like that's getting better and better. Our team game is getting better. We're playing more as a team and playing more together, connected, and obviously I think when you do that, the rest of the game will follow.
All right, Emma, you buying that? They made progress. They played better games. They're just not finishing. It's just not quite there yet, clearly. Are you buying what Roman's selling after practice on Tuesday?
This is probably not going to be a popular answer, but I am buying it. I think that what we saw last week was a lot more like what we saw from like the early season Predators last year, where it was like, okay, you're seeing the right things are happening, but they're not getting the results. Before, like this year, it looked like, okay, they're not even trying. Like, what are they doing? Now it seems like the effort is there. Another thing people really aren't going to like to hear, but I'm in that kind of mood today. Actually, I'm in that kind of mood most days. I was gonna say. John Hines' vindication at the Minnesota Wild. I love to see it personally, but I think that, look, you know, it was a illustration that defensive minded style of hockey can work, but the Wild have Kirill Kaprizov, the Predators do not. And so that is like that defensive minded style of hockey can work if you have the superstar that the Predators did not have. Now the Predators have a new coach. They're not playing that super defensive minded style of hockey. They have those quote unquote superstars theoretically, although we haven't really seen them yet. And I think that, you know, if you look at the way that they played against Minnesota, I thought that they really hung with them. And Minnesota at the time was tied for the most points in the league with Winnipeg. And Winnipeg obviously is a team that Nashville beat the week before. So I think
Nashville helped them take the lead in points in the NHL.
Yes. So by the transitive property. No, I think that I was more encouraged by what I saw, particularly in the Minnesota game. And I think that if you play games like that more often than not, you are going to win.
I tend to agree, and I will even agree with you that I'm buying what he is selling in that conversation we had with him yesterday, which is that they are close, they are making progress, they are getting better. They just got to kind of learn how to finish. And I don't disagree with any of that. I think the statistical probability of losing 6 games in overtime for the exact same score is almost 0%, by the way. And I don't think they've ever lost 3 games in a row in overtime with the same score ever. I don't think that's ever happened.
And it should also tell you that all of this is such a fluky thing that this is happening. Like, that is so fluky. That's the exception to the rule. The fact that they have the record that they do right now with all the talent they brought in, that is an exception. It's a fluke. These things happen. And I don't think that it means that any drastic measures like firing certain individuals need to be taken.
I agree with you about sort of the analysis of it all and Josi's analysis of it all. But they're running out of time for the fluke not to be the thing that happens this year. And you know, Mr. Barzil asks about the firing and Carl Taylor. We'll get to that in just a second. That'll be the vast majority of the show today. At some point, it doesn't matter, right? And I think we all can acknowledge that. We're all adults here, and I think at some point it doesn't matter. And that's sort of where I'm at. I'm like, yes, I can see. It's the same thing with the Titans. I can see Will Levis making progress. I can see the offense making progress, but eventually it does have to translate into victories. And so you can only ask fans to be so patient. Now, that's a very different situation. We were talking about professional sports in Nashville. That's year one of a total rebuild. They don't know. They don't have good players. They weren't expected to be good. They didn't go into the offseason, and although they did sign a couple of big free agents, it's just different situation. There's expectations with this team that weren't around that team. So I agree with you. I'll buy it, but it doesn't matter at some point whether or not they are making progress or not. It has to turn into 2 points, and it has to turn into 2 points most nights. And they've got to win. Like, I know Toronto is very good, but Montreal and Ottawa are not, even though Patrick Laine is already scoring goals for Montreal. I think they've got to get at least 4, if not 5 or 6 points in this little miniature road trip this week. So,
well, I think that's all true. I think all of those things can be true. And I would, I feel pretty confident saying that Roman agrees with you there too, that you need to get the results and there needs to be 2 points. But you also, I'm not saying that, oh, let's all pat ourselves on the back because we've shown a little bit of progress and we're all about moral victories. Right. I understand that is not where we're at right now. However, even if you're not going to celebrate the progress being made, you need to at least acknowledge it, I think, if you're a fan, and be like, look, this looks like a different team. The results are the same, and that is a problem, and that is a problem that hopefully will turn around here. But the process to get to the end result, in my opinion, has looked better.
I think factually you're correct. And I don't think anybody's celebrating it. I don't think the locker room is not a fun place to be right now.
No, but I mean, even if I'm just anticipating people coming at me saying like, oh, that's not good enough, and I get it. It's not. It doesn't translate into 2 points. It's not good enough. But it's just a observation of what I have watched unfold over the last couple weeks here. So
it is factually true. It needs to turn into points this week. They're running out of time for us to continue to have the same conversation, which is, oh, they've got to get 4 out of 8, or they've got to get 6 out of 8, or they've got to get 5 out of 6, or they've got to get 10 out of 14 points. They got to get points in 5 out of 8. That time is over. They've got to. It just has to happen now, because every time we've said that, it hasn't happened. So,
well, Barry Trotz gave on the radio yesterday, he kind of gave the deadline of Christmas as being like, by Christmas. And I think that's fair. I think that you'll have a better idea. You may not know everything by then, but I think that you will have a better idea. And that's a realistic timeline. You've got 3 weeks now to kind of really show if this is moving towards something. But
I hear you. Josh says Nashville's still second worst in the league in puck luck. That's certainly a problem, and Minnesota is best. That absolutely will regress. And we'll get into this with the Brunette conversation, because I think Winnipeg is a perfect example of how this stuff can switch real fast. Kevin says, what do you make of Stamkos's comments about other players and who he was talking about? I do think it was basically, if you missed it, I'll paraphrase here, but basically, if we're not scoring goals, what are you here for? It's essentially. And I do think one of the things, and I did not write this in my story or my column last week, and I probably should have, which is the players need to be more aggressive, holding themselves accountable. And if that means publicly calling people out, I am all for Steven Stamkos doing this. He is a very, he's a very sort, I don't want to say mild-mannered personality in the locker room, but he's not a flamethrower. And so when he says something, it's a little bit sort of speak softly, carry a big stick a little bit with him. And I think he has a very sort of even-keeled temperament in the locker room. And I think him saying something is very productive, or could be very productive in my mind. So good call by you, Kevin.
Yeah, I think that he, what he said, I like that he differentiated in his comments, because he said, look, it's okay to be frustrated that we're not scoring goals. We should be frustrated. If we're not frustrated, then that's an even bigger problem. So it's okay to be frustrated in the results. We should be. But you get out of that frustration by working at it. And that's where the whole thing about work ethic came into play. It's you don't just get frustrated, oh, we're not scoring, and then just sit back and wait for the bad times to pass. You have to actually put the work in and get out of it. And I think, what I took from that is he is seeing that certain players, I think some people, again, wishful thinking. I saw some people thinking that he was taking a shot at the coaching staff. I really don't think he was.
No.
I think it was very much at either an individual player or a small group of players. And it's not good journalism to sit here and speculate, oh, I think he was talking about this guy or this guy. I just think in general, he was talking about his teammates and saying, look, there's certain guys on the team who have not shown the work ethic that they need to get out of this rut that they're in. And like, the frustration and the emotion is there, and we do feel strongly, we recognize that this is bad and that we should be better than this, but people aren't putting in the necessary work to actually turn this ship around.
Yep. Keaton says, in the end, you need to score more than 2 goals to win games. That is absolutely correct. Ben says, leaders need to lead, and sometimes that means keeping people accountable. It sucks to hear, but that's what it has to be. Look, here's the deal about we're not, if you get paid to score and create offense and you are not, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at who he's talking about. And I agree. He's not talking about any one particular player, in my opinion. He's calling everybody out, saying we all need to be better and we all need to do better. And the ones who are supposed to do that part of the game need to do better. That's it. I will say this, and this is a positive here before we kind of move on. And that is, I am curious what you think about Svechkov sticking. The guy's shot, watching him in practice yesterday, he was out there real early on Monday, by the way. It was just him and Justus Annunen. I'm going to keep practicing that.
Big juice.
Big juice.
Big juice and a little juice.
Well, we'll get
in
to
stature
that.
only.
We will get to that. He acknowledged he probably will have to change his nickname. Just saying. Svechkov was out there getting reps with Vanderklok to help out, obviously, because it was Ben Vanderklok and Annunen out there on Monday, way before everybody else. But his shot is heavy. He's got a salty shot, and it's fun to watch. And I think he has the actual opportunity. I don't know if he's a 2C. I think if they go make a trade, he's maybe their third center, but like he's got the ability. If this was a rebuild situation, I absolutely think Svechkov would be penciled into a top 6 line situation right now. If this was a true rebuild, I don't know if that's the role he'll play long term on this particular team, constructed the way it is. But man, talk about ability to score. I think he's got it because his shot is different. It comes off his stick a lot different than the other guys. So
yeah, I mean, we saw that in his first goal against Minnesota, and I mean that was a nice one. And I want to also give credit to his line mates. He's been on that line with Mark Jankowski and Luke Evangelista, and I think that putting a guy like Svechkov, and yes, like Svechkov is a bigger guy than like a Tommy Novak, for example, but I think that putting him on a line with a Jankowski type player, Jankowski kind of acts as like that little security blanket for him a little bit, and that he's the guy with the size who goes in and creates chaos and can, create space for Svechkov and Evangelista to go and do their thing. And so I think that's kind of an underrated combination that we've seen. And we saw it even, the pass from Evangelista to Svechkov for his first goal was also really, really nice. And so I think that Jankowski gets some credit, even though he's not on the score sheet. I think he should get some credit for that.
Those two in that particular goal, Evangelista and Svechkov, the two guys doing the thing that they do very well in that play, which is distribute for Evangelista and put pucks in the net for Svechkov. I am always, you mentioned like Svechkov being a bigger guy, like compared to me, he is so tiny, and I'm always so alarmed at how thin and skinny and tiny hockey players actually are relative to other. Like Jankowski's taller than me, like he's a bigger guy, but like not many guys in that locker room are bigger than me. And I go into a football locker room, and everyone's bigger than me. It's just you kind of forget how like you just have to be in such good cardio shape to play hockey. It's why they're all so skinny.
It also doesn't help that Svechkov in the face only looks like he's about 13.
Yeah,
so it just adds to that.
And then you put the full cage on.
It looks like he's playing like
little guy
hockey.
Yeah, little guys out there scoring goals and trying. No, I think he's got some staying power, like LaRue. I think there's a maturity to how they play the game. It's good skating and sort of knowing their roles and doing their roles well. I think they've got some staying power, just like I think Mark Del Gaizo's got staying power. You know what I mean? So
if he can get back in the damn lineup.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I got thoughts on that.
Okay, so let's quickly. We're going to talk road trip here. We're going to talk Brunette. We're going to talk Annunen and goalie strategy. But quickly here, Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue open at 11 a.m. Wednesday through Sunday until 3 p.m. or until the meat is gone, because that's the kind of barbecue joint they are. They don't put the meat in like a warmer in the back and just like have a dinner rush. It's not it. They smoke the meat and then they sell the meat and you eat the meat and then we're done with the meat. That's it. They don't leave it sitting in the back somewhere waiting for you to come by and get it later that night. You got to get it from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Only open Wednesday through Sunday. Sinkers Beverages, of course. Sign up for the in crowd. The other big win for me on Thanksgiving, Emma. I cracked a bottle of Weller 12, which does not happen very often at my house. I've only had one or two of those ever in my life. But, I had my brother-in-law, my dad. I thought, you know what? It's Thanksgiving. Let's treat him a little bit. You know where I got that Weller 12? I'll give you 5 guesses, and the last 4 don't count, Emma.
I'm going to go Sinkers Beverages.
Yes, you are correct. Sinkers Beverages. The ad reads today are optional. We'll get to that. So Sinkers Beverages for the win. Seriously. Fantastic on the wine, fantastic on the bourbon. Great selection and award-winning craft beer retail fridge as well. So walk in there. I don't know if they have any stocking stuffers for your dog, but I suppose if Minka's got a little head cold, you could probably give her like a little bit of like brandy in her bowl. She might go to sleep. Sinkers could help with your dog's head cold, is what I'm saying.
Or with her anxiety around fire alarms, and I need something to knock her out real good. Sinkers Beverages.
It's a hot toddy. just put together a hot toddy for her. All right, I want to do this quickly because I want to move on to the other stuff. But practice was optional on Monday, and I got out there, and there was like eight guys, and it's all the 8 that you'd expect, right? It's Michael McCarron and Del Gaizo and Blankenberg and Svechkov, and I actually think Evangelista was out there, one of the only sort of like regulars that's not a young guy, but I guess he is fairly young. So it was not a lot of people, and Brunette did more talking, I think, in that practice than I've heard him ever talk during practice, which also makes sense. There's not as much going on. I expected some reaction when I got there and saw how few people were there and that it was optional. I expected there to be some fans going like, why aren't they doing 3 hours of overtime practice? Why aren't they doing 3 hours of power play practice? Why aren't they doing line rushes for 3 hours? Why aren't they doing odd man rush defense for 3 hours? Like there's so much they should be doing. And granted, I understand how that feels coming off that, because I assume they were off on Sunday, right? Like they had a day off on Sunday. So you're getting paid millions of dollars, come back in and get to work. That's not exactly how optional practices work, but the reaction I thought was very predictable, Emma. Fans being frustrated with an optional practice in the middle of a really, really bad streak of hockey where you are not achieving your goals.
Yeah, listen, I think that obviously it's a bad time in Predators land and people are upset, rightfully so. And so then they kind of grasp at anything to blame for, this is why things are going so poorly. It's because they're not making practice mandatory. Y'all, optional practice happens every day with every team in the entire league. You know who else does optional practice? Winnipeg, Florida, New Jersey, like all the really good teams, like they do it too. So it's not, this is the reason that Nashville is not performing. It's because practice is optional. No, that's not it. And for the record, optional practice doesn't mean that the guys who aren't skating are at home on the couch. Everyone's there. They're just all doing different things. Like some guys are on the ice. Some guys are in the weight rooms. Some guys are getting treatment. Some guys are in meetings with the video coaches, going over the power play strategy. There's like so many different things that happen. So optional practice, I think, is just like people just really latched on to that phrase because it sounds bad in the current landscape. And I get that. But I think that optional practice is not really the best term for what's actually happening there. It's optional on ice sessions. And I think that, if you think about it, and all the guys that you said who were at the optional practice on ice and actually working are the guys who aren't getting a lot of ice time in the actual games. And that can be part of a bigger conversation that, we can have all day long. But I think that the guys who are getting more ice time are not the ones who are going to be on the ice practicing, if that makes sense. Like they are the ones who are going to benefit less from that. The young guys who Brunette likes to keep on a very short leash are the ones who are going to be out there and getting that extra ice time and the healthy scratches because they're not getting it in games.
Makes sense. Kevin says, remember when Lavi was the coach and couldn't win 3-on-3? I do remember that. And then Pete Weber said they finally said in a post game that they never practiced it. Benjamin says, and this is totally true, and I think we both agree with this, that sports science has come far enough to let us know that off days are just as important as practice days. You need rest days, mental health just as important as skating. Here's the thing. I don't think, I don't disagree with anything you're saying, and I don't think it's attached. Oh, Shea Weber. Sorry, Kevin. What's interesting is I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I don't think that's the complaint, though. I don't think the complaint is, they're not winning or playing well because of an optional practice. I think it's you're not playing well. Why isn't practice mandatory? Right? It's a kind of the same equation, but a different direction, I think. And it's sort of like, and that's my thought too. Is I walked in, I sat down next to a couple of other folks that some of whom are Preds employees and some are not, and I just said, why aren't they just doing? And I wasn't saying because I think this, but I was saying, I don't think people are going to be happy they're not practicing overtime or whatever. You know what I mean? Like I could see it coming, the reaction, because the team is struggling so much and because they had just lost in a very specific situation, like 3 times in a row, that people are going to be frustrated that they're not doing more, especially coming off an off day on Sunday. You had a mandatory practice. They also had a team meeting immediately following that, which is very normal and standard. It wasn't like a hellfire and brimstone team meeting, like, come to Jesus or whatever. It wasn't any of that. Just a regular old meeting. But that's, I think, the angle. If you're arguing for why a fan is frustrated, is they are frustrated by the season. Why aren't you doing everything possible? And I'm not even saying that that's even logical. I'm not saying that if you'd mandatorily practice every day that you'd all of a sudden start winning games. Like I'm not even saying that. It's just a weird look. Even if you are correct that a lot of teams have these moments where they just you can't grind every day on an 82 game season. You got to have some downtime. So
it just feels like low hanging fruit. I think when if they're not winning, they should be practicing more. And it's like that. There's other things that go into it.
So road trips real quickly. I wrote the story. I talked to Roman Josi about it. I was curious, like, what does that actually look like? I know you've been on these, so I'd love to hear your insight on this. I think the prevailing wisdom on road trips, in particular the long Western Canadian one, was, man, this team needs to get away from Nashville. They lost a bunch of home games early. They need to bond on the road, build some chemistry, refocus, curate their schedules, et cetera, et cetera. And Roman's a different kind of guy. Like he's not a party guy. He's not out. He's not having, like, he's a family man who's quiet and kind of just keeps to himself and likes to play hockey. And so I kind of knew he was going to give me something different than the prevailing wisdom. And sure enough, he went overboard and was like, yeah, it doesn't help me at all to be away from my wife and kids. I need to be around my family because that helps my brain get removed from hockey a little bit. And then he kind of went on and I was like, well, what, he goes, but there is more time for self-care on the road. And all this is in the story, so go read it. And I said, well, what does your self-care look like? And he meditates, he reads books, he takes advantage of the alone time and the downtime and sort of the monotony and the boring parts of the road trip to focus inward. And honestly, my thought walking away from the conversation was, I think there's a lot of folks on this team and in this organization that need to be focused inward right now. And that could do them some good. A little bit of bonding helps, but really it's like, if you're in a bad mental headspace, which this team clearly is, one of the ways to get out of that is sort of contemplation and thoughtfulness and taking time to think through things and to reevaluate and to reset and to, if talking about mental health, like that's exactly what Roman Josi is talking about there. So,
yeah, I mean, I think everyone's different, obviously, in terms of what they need to be successful. And as far as the road trip stuff goes, like, yes, Roman is a very, he's not a party guy, but I also
we'll just say he's lame. Like, we'll just say it.
but I don't want that. I feel like people are going to take from that the rest of the guys are out, drinking until 3 a.m.
No,
quite
honestly,
honestly,
a couple of them.
Honestly, though, like, again, I've spent so much time on the road with this team, and it's really not like they are very disciplined on the road. And the only time you're going to see guys like really letting loose like that is if they have an off day the next day. Quite honestly, Nashville is one of the cities where visiting teams tend to get into trouble. Yeah,
I've heard stories.
Yeah. I've been present for some of those nights as well. So I think that there's just like, there's maybe this misconception that guys go out on the road and they just party all the time. And that's so not the case. I think that
it's just Hal and C-May.
You said it, not me. But I think that it's like,
I'm kidding.
I think that you have to look at it as like, no, just because they're on the road doesn't mean that they're all sitting around and talking about hockey together the entire time. I think it's just like, again, I've talked about this before, but when you're on the road, that your entire existence, like your entire reason for being there is to play hockey. And you, like you said, you get more time to focus on yourself and focus on what you need. You get that alone time. You don't have outside responsibilities. You don't even have to worry about, things that you don't think of as being like quote unquote stressors, but they're things that take up space in your mind. Like, oh, I have to leave at this time to beat traffic to get to the rink at this time. And I need to go home and do this and that and whatever. It's like, nope, the bus is coming at this time. You get on, you go to the rink, you get off, you get back on the bus, you get back. Your entire life is scheduled for you. And it's honestly quite nice.
I think it's different for every player and every team in every situation. Like if a team's playing, if a bunch of guys really love being on the road and the team's playing well, that could be beneficial. If a bunch of guys don't like being on the road and the team is playing poorly, then that could be a good thing as well. I think it's different time of the season for different types of players for a different stretch of hockey. I came away from the conversation thinking like that it means something different for everybody. That's sort of how I came away from the conversation. And again, I'm just allegedly kidding about Hal and C-Mace. They did build an entire brand around, look, we have to get to the bar so fast that we can't unpack our bags. Like, I just want to point that out. That's their whole brand.
And I would just like to point out that is not the mentality or the behavior exhibited by any of the players on the road. To be clear.
It doesn't mean that the players don't like to have a good time.
But they know when is appropriate.
They do. That's no different for me. Like, I know when to have a good time. Thursday night, I'm going to the Ryman to watch Brent Cobb. Shout out, one of the best musicians in Nashville right now. I'm not going to have anything to drink or do anything wrong the entire week. And then I'm going to allow myself the freedom to have a couple cocktails on Thursday night. So absolutely. Everybody has the right to do that. You work hard, you get to enjoy yourself every now and then. So,
well, and I think when it comes to having time, like you said, looking inward and focusing inward, that also can look very different for different players. Different guys have different things that they like to do on the road. Philip Forsberg is he's kind of the ringleader of the whole Mario Kart gang. They play Mario Kart on the plane. They get really into it. Matthias Ekholm was also big in that, but obviously has since departed. But then you've got like Ryan O'Reilly brings his ukulele. He likes to play music.
It's the most Ryan O'Reilly sounding activity I've ever
heard. Honestly though, it's like he'd probably rather bring his guitar, but it's a lot to carry.
I just picture, I could just see Ryan O'Reilly like with all of his kids like under a palm tree, just being like wearing a Hawaiian shirt, just playing like Jack Johnson songs. You know what I mean?
Gather around, children.
It's
Yeah.
it's just such a, I don't know why that strikes me as a very Ryan O'Reilly thing to do.
Yeah, but guys like to play cards, there's a bunch of different things that people like to do. So.
And the socializing, and Roman's big point was like when there's a lot of time for it, you do have organized team stuff. Like they had their big rookie dinner, of course, out in on the Western Swing, and I'm not really at liberty to give out details about that, but they did do something like that when they have the extra night off in Seattle, for example. Like they're going to do stuff like that, but largely it's sort of small groups, intimate groups, 6 to 8 guys that kind of go do their thing. It changes up who's going to do what, because they do spend a ton of time together on the plane, waiting for the plane, at practice, eating, traveling to the hotel, back at the hotel, back at practice, back on the plane. They spend a ton of time together, so there is still plenty of opportunity to bond. This particular road trip and this particular stretch of hockey, it didn't translate to anything. Is the team playing a little bit better? Sure. But we'll find out on this little road trip where they had a night off, not a night off, but they had an extra night in Canada last night. They'll have another one Friday night, but basically this is a wall-to-wall hockey trip for them. 3 games in 4 days, and then they're back like 2 a.m. on Sunday morning. So I thought it was interesting. I didn't know where Roman was going to take me on this conversation, but it doesn't surprise me where he did. So go read it, of course, and please subscribe to Lower Broad Hockey. There's a little nugget in there about what teams like to do in Nashville when they come to town. So I'm not going to give it away. Go check it out. It might have been illegal, but I don't know. All right, so let's talk about Bruno. That was sort of the main part of the show, and we're a little deeper into the show than I expected to do this. But I said on the show with Adam on Monday that I think it's okay to start having the conversation about this, and I tend to be very conservative about this stuff. I think it's totally fine and acceptable if you're a fan and you think we need to make changes. The problem with changes is that the only real change that they can make that is going to be a significant swing of any kind is the coach. You can't get rid of all the players. There's no point in getting rid of the front office. Like if you're talking drastic moves here, the assistant coaches don't do much to change the outlook of the season. The thing that is both red meat for the fans and also will lead to a change is the coach. And it's not even necessarily fair to him that that's the case, but he's the only piece that you really can just quickly and efficiently change into something different. And somebody earlier, Keaton, I think, asked about Carl Taylor. He is a great interim option. And if that's the worst case scenario, that Carl Taylor is your interim coach, you could do worse. All the other names that could have been available got snapped up real fast. And so I don't know, maybe there's some other changes around the league that lead them to say, hey, that guy might be better. Looking at your squad. I don't know. But I think what's interesting is that he's kind of the only real option. And so I think it's okay to talk about this. Adam Bingen is saying it should happen now, which is, I'm not going that far. Things can change quickly. Winnipeg had the greatest start in NHL history and is now not even in first place and has lost 7 out of 10 games, including one to the Preds. So it can happen fast. Minnesota, Winnipeg, Dallas, Colorado, Vegas, Kings, Canucks, Calgary, Edmonton, all 28 points or better. They got to get to that. They got to get to that group of teams if they want to make the playoffs. And I am okay with a conversation about changing coaches to do that.
I think the conversation is fine to have. I'm not going to be so quick to say nope, don't even start. It's not going anywhere. I think it's fine to have the conversation. I am still not there on firing Bruno. I also think that right now a mid-season coaching change at this point is not really going to accomplish much. Because again, this isn't a make or break year for them as much as people like to think it is. It's not. And so I think that it's okay to have the conversation, but I'm still not there yet. And I wouldn't even get more serious about it until, again, I go back to he's given us reason to believe that he can pull this team out of it because he did it last year. And so I think he has since earned another full season to prove that he can do that. And if he can't, And again, this still isn't even entirely his fault, but like you said, a lot of times the coach has to be the guy who falls on the sword for the shortcomings of the rest of the team. Right or wrong, it's just it happens because you can't fire a whole team. So
and they're really bad.
yeah, and like again, I think that it just doesn't make sense. Like, sure, have the conversation, warm his seat up a little bit, heading into maybe next year. But I think right now it doesn't make sense because like to me, and I think Barry Trotz thinks this way because again, he had a coach under contract when he hired Andrew Brunette and he made it very clear that he wasn't going to do that. It's not like Trotz hated John Hines and just wanted to like replace him as quickly as possible. It was like, I already had a coach. I didn't need to go out and do this. I wouldn't have done it if it wasn't the best possible guy for the job, in my opinion. And so I think because of that, this is Trotz's guy who he handpicked to bring in to this job. I think that, yes, it's fine to be frustrated. It's good to be frustrated. His seat should be a little bit warmer for sure. But I don't think that firing him now is really going to do anything productive.
This is going to feel weird, but this is sort of part of the podcast world where we get to like work through this stuff. You can't do this stuff on radio. It almost feels like they should have done it like weeks ago or wait until the end of the season. And that's sort of a new theory that just like I'm landing on maybe like now as we're having the conversation, which is like, okay, what is now by you? Statistically, what are the odds that you hire a coach that is better than Andrew Brunette? Probably not high at this point of the season. Maybe in the offseason, you have a much better chance of hiring somebody, quote unquote, better than Andrew Brunette. Does a change in messenger, does a change in message, does a change instantaneously make a team better? A lot of times it does. We've seen that in hockey a lot, that a guy's message kind of runs a little this or runs a little stale or whatever. And just a new voice can do a lot for folks, which is just sort of change for change's sake, sometimes does work. I think there's some other dynamics at play. You alluded to this. Barry Trotz, if he fires Andrew Brunette today, last month, next month, it is a reflection directly on him. And that's not good in terms of like sometimes GMs hold on too long out of pride for their own ego. Trotzy doesn't strike me as that kind of guy, but it's human nature. Like to say that I failed and I messed up and I did this wrong and I'm going to fix it, that's putting a target on your own back. But it's also the job. Like that's part of the job. So I don't know. I'm sort of, I don't know. It sounds like you kind of agree with like it should have happened weeks ago or probably not till the end of the year. I'm not 100% there yet, but I could see that being the correct analysis.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I don't think it should have happened weeks ago. But again, if it did, it like now is not the time. I don't think it really accomplishes anything in the long term because like sure, you might see, like you said, change for change's sake. You might say, oh, hey, we go and win 5 games. Yay. But like, again, at this point in the year, I'm not trying to say it's too late for them to turn it around. It's not. I mean, we're getting there, but it's not. I'm not guaranteeing that they're going to turn it around, but I'm saying that if you were trying to really make a run at it this year, then, that maybe would have been, should have done it earlier. Or again, now you've kind of passed that window. So you need to wait until the end of the year. And so I think that, again, if you look at it as kind of a 2 to 3 year process, like there is so much new that happened with this team this year. And I know it feels bad. It is bad, but like this has not been a lot of time in the grand scheme of things. It feels like it. Trust me, it feels like it when you have to watch this team every night, but it really hasn't been. Just
watching them try to exit, just try to go from blue line to blue line is it's hard to watch.
It's painful. Listen, I missed practice yesterday because I was at the dentist and I thought, you know what, this might actually be a more pleasant experience.
It's funny you say that. It was sloppy. And that wasn't necessarily reported anywhere by anybody, but like there were a lot of drills where it was sloppy. And it's not just it's not because people are like awful at their jobs. It's just sometimes the pass misses or another puck gets in the way because there's like a gazillion pucks out there. But like it was a sloppy practice. So I don't know. We'll see. Yes,
I had no cavities, by the way, in case anyone was wondering.
I'm proud of you.
Not a sloppy trip to the dentist.
Proud
Thank
of
you very much.
Those low sugar beverages from Sinker's Beverages doing the job. Ben says, "Oh, Braden said Trotsy." I'm telling Michael. Yeah, Josh says, "Got him." It's completely true. Hey, Mike, what's up, man? Good to see you, buddy. Hope things are going well. Yes, Josh and Kevin and Ben in the comment section having a big old time talking about the Brunette conversation. I also think so. I think logically, if you're talking about a fairly young coach in terms of experience, right? Like how many years he's been an official head coach. You're talking about Barry Trotz, the number of years and time he's been a general manager, the amount of games that this group of players has played together. It still is very young and new-ish. It's getting closer to not. And I certainly think by the end of the year, if they don't make the playoffs, I'm okay with a coaching change. I tend to agree with you that I feel like you've earned the right to fight your way out of this. And, the first thing you always say, not you, but in general, is Thanksgiving. You get to Thanksgiving and it's sort of, okay. And then now we're sort of going, okay, in January, you got to get to the new year. And if they are still the fewest wins in the NHL in January, I think that's when you start having a conversation about this needs to, again, it doesn't mean he doesn't go on to be a good coach somewhere else. It doesn't mean he's not a good coach today. It doesn't mean that. It just means it's not working right now. And sometimes making a change is the right thing to do. I certainly have no problem with fans calling for the change. I don't think you can be upset. Andrew Brunette, he's a big boy. Barry Trotz is a big boy. These are adults who know what they're doing, and it's not personal. It's results-oriented business. And if you're not getting results, eventually, if you're one of the worst teams in the league at a variety, you're the lowest scoring team who's got here's the other one, the most bench minor penalties in the league is a direct reflection on the coaching staff, in my opinion. Like, I know sometimes it's a player mistake, but like that's a mental discipline problem. And that one's an issue. Scoring and the line changes and the some mistakes and overtime. There's lots of different reasons, but like, man, leading the league in just sort of like silly, dumb bench penalties. That's a bad sign
for sure. And I think that's why the seat should be warm, and it's fine to have the conversation. And I just think that making a change right now is not going to be, bring any long-term benefit.
Josh asked a good question here. How many coaching hires does a general manager get in hockey? The Predators' last one got 3. But that was a different situation than most gyms. I actually don't know the answer to that question, Emma. Do you?
No. I mean, I think it's extremely dependent on the market that they're in, the team, the organization, but also the coaching landscape, who's available, who's not. I mean, I don't think that Drew Bannister would have gotten canned in St. Louis this year. He just signed a new contract, but then,
Monty. Can I call him Monty or should I?
Yeah, then Monty becomes available and all of a sudden that changes things. And so, yeah, I just I don't know. I think there's so many extenuating factors there that it's hard to really put a number on it.
I think, look, they're 8 points out of playoff spots right now. If you're looking at Colorado and Edmonton as the two teams tied for the last playoff spot at 28 points. To me, it's if nothing happens, if no changes happen by January, meaning they're still seven wins, the worst win total in the NHL, the lowest scoring offense in the NHL, the most bench mistakes, the one of the worst 5-on-5 teams. Like, if the metrics and the numbers and the standings don't change, I think there's a much larger call for his head and a much larger conversation to be had. I'm okay with that being January. I will admit this. I am far more conservative and far more patient when it comes to this stuff. I will continue to repeat myself on that. But I will say, if they miss the playoffs for the entire season and we get to the end of the year and this team is not in the postseason, I think the front office is justified in making a move. Honestly, that's what it comes down to. You never really know if it's the right move or not. Sometimes you make a move and it's the wrong move. Sometimes you make a move and it's the right move. But it's about the justification and sort of at the right moment at the right time. And if they don't make the playoffs, I think they're totally justified in making a move.
Yes, but at the end of the season.
Yeah.
That's the point. It's like, fine, start having the conversation, but the people who are, fire him right now, it's like, that's not going to do anything.
I think you're underselling a change in voice and a change in scheme, because
I'm not saying that. I'm saying have the conversation about firing him in general, but doing it right now, I don't think is really going to have the effect that people think it will. It might in the immediate term, but long term.
Well, and you might not even be able to, because there's a good chance that if you don't fire him, they get better because they can't really go anywhere else. Yeah. But if you do fire him, they get better. People are going to directly correlate that with the move, even though they would have probably gotten better anyway.
Yes.
So I'm not
exactly. The coach can fall on the sword, but the coach can also get lifted up for things that maybe he is or isn't responsible for at some level. So.
Look, not a good situation. Certainly an unexpected one that this organization and fans did not expect to be in at this time of the year, to be this bad. It's one thing to underachieve. It's another thing to be this bad. And so I don't know. At this point, again, I can tell you what I would do. You can say what you would do. But at the end of the day, I don't think anything Barry Trotz does from here on out is controversial. I just don't think it is. And he could be right. He could be wrong. And we'll have lots of time to judge that. But I don't think anything right now is unjustified and off the table. Everything's on the table at this point. All right, including sending your backup goaltender to a division rival who's having major goaltending problems. All right, so let's introduce Justus Annunen first. Did I get it right again?
Yes, you did.
God, 3 times in the show. Hell yeah. Okay. His availability, first time ever as a Nashville Predator, first practice ever as a Nashville Predator. Thought you guys should be introduced to him first. He is from the same hometown as Pekka Rinne, knew all about him, of course, knew all about the Preds and their Finnish goaltending track record. Here's about a minute and a half from that 6-minute conversation we had to have with the new Predators backup goaltender, Justus Annunen.
Well, it's I think he were like the best Finnish goalie in the NHL that time when I were growing up and kind of start to understand something about hockey. So it were like unreal to follow his career, and I got to skate a couple of times with him in the summers. Like we kind of switched, like when he stopped playing. That's when I came over here. So it was great to see him on the ice sometimes and skate with him.
Do you have any good memories of him growing up? Do you remember anything in particular watching Pekka Rinne play for Nashville?
Well, like the Stanley Cup finals, like I were old enough to remember those, like I were watching those, and I think that were big one. And then always like in the World Championships, he were like playing a lot of those, so it was always great to watch him play.
To come somewhere too, where obviously he was here, Justus Annunen was here. A lot of Finnish goaltenders have come here. What do you think about that? To come somewhere where they kind of have a record of working with Finnish goalies and turning them into what they've been able to become. What do you think of that?
Well, I think it's a great opportunity for me to learn from one of the best goalies in the league right now, and from all the goaltending apartment here, I only heard a lot of good things. So I'm really excited to get the opportunity to work with all those guys and have a mentor like Josi every day to watch how he practices, plays, and do all the stuff and get to know him. So it's this was a perfect spot for me at this point on my career.
Yeah. All right, there you go. Predators' new 23-year-old goaltender, 3rd-round pick, of course, big dude, and lots of. I'm going to post the entire video. I've got the whole conversation is about 5.5, 6 minutes long. I've got the whole conversation. I'll post that on the Lower Broad Hockey Substack chat room there for you guys to keep an eye on it and watch the whole thing. I'm curious what you think the strategy was here around the trade.
I love this trade. Like, honestly, I think it makes total sense. And I think that, on paper, it just sounds like a backup goalie swap. And it's like, why are we even talking about this? But I think it makes a ton of sense because, first of all, Barry Trotz did say that they had tried, their scouts had been high on Annunen for a while. They tried to get him in the Yakov-Trenin trade last year, and they didn't. And I think that, if you look at the differing needs between these two teams. Like Colorado, they had a very precarious goaltending situation. Alexander Georgiev is notoriously streaky, but this year has been especially bad. That, like, for Colorado, their goaltending has been holding them back, and they need to, Nashville obviously not in that situation. And so I think that they needed someone to provide some stability on the in the crease there, because when your starter is struggling a lot, like Georgiev has been, it's a lot to ask of a 24-year-old kid like Annunen to say, hey, you're the guy now, like, get in there, good luck. And that's like not really putting him in the best position to succeed. I think that is a role where that Scott Wedgewood is particularly suited for. Kind of a similar, like he was the, coming into Nashville, he was only going to be a short-term solution. And that's kind of what he's there for. At this point in his career, he's 32 years old. He's, he provides stability on the back end for a team like Colorado. He did it in Dallas too, when Ottinger was injured and they needed, kind of a stabilizing force back there. And so I think that this is a situation that's much better for Wedgewood. It's also a situation that's much better for Annunen, because he gets a ton of pressure taken off of him by coming to Nashville. No one's relying on him to be the guy and be like, hey, fix all of our problems, because goaltending is like the one thing that's not a problem in Nashville. And so I think it also, it should make people who are upset about the whole Askarov situation, it should make them feel better about it, because they didn't just, absolutely, he was part of the reason.
I assume Josh has the elephant in the room. Was Wedgewood part of the reason we had to make a certain trade? I assume he's talking about the Askarov trade.
So I think that you need to, you can be critical of Barry Trotz for how he handled that situation. I think the fact that he kind of revealed that he had tried to get Annunen last year at the deadline shows that the decision about Askarov had been made long before they even signed Wedgewood. And so I don't think that trading Askarov was the wrong move, but I think that
he's been trying to trade Askarov for like a year and a half.
But I'm saying that he should have pulled the trigger sooner.
Maybe, yeah.
And then it wouldn't have gotten to where it was. I'm not saying just take the first offer, but I'm saying it turned into this drama, this like late off-season situation, because he didn't do it sooner. And so I think that, and it looked especially bad because people are like, all right, so we lose our promising prospect, and then we now have this 32-year-old who's going to be here for 2 seasons and then leave, and then what? And so I think that now getting Annunen in here, he's young, he's talented, he's very promising. He's still impressionable and malleable at 24 years old. And for him to get developed in this system with Saros, with, Pekka, with Vanderklok, Mitch Korn, all of those guys, I mean, I think it's going to be tremendously valuable, and he can be, he can fit into the long-term plan for this team.
So a lot of things here. I think it is safe to assume that, like, a couple of assumptions I think you have to make. Number one, that a goaltending situation is like an entire, it's like a whole it's bigger than just UC Saros, right? It's how many young prospects do you have? You've got to look at the goaltending situation, because if you trade one away, you can't just replace them, right? Like, you can't just call up a defenseman from the AHL. Like, that's not necessarily how it works in goal. And so you have to have like layered plans of approach for years upon years. And they have a bunch of young, very talented goaltenders behind UC Saros now. I think they have 4 goaltenders under the age of 26 now inside the farm system or draft picks, including Annunen. So I think you have to look at sort of the holistic goalie structure from top to bottom. That's number one. Number two, what's the anatomy of a trade? Well, this is not a situation where the Predators went to them. The only 2 ways a trade can happen is you go to someone else because you think that there's a need there and that you have an answer to that trade, or that you have a need, or that they come to you and say, we need someone that can fix our problem. I am under the impression that Colorado came to Nashville. and that Scott Wedgewood had nothing to do with, and I see a few of you commenting about Tomasino and Fabro in the comments. This has nothing to do with anything else. This was Colorado having a problem and a hole, coming to Nashville and saying, we'll take Scott Wedgewood. We know you like the guy we have. That is, I would say, got to the NHL ahead of his time. He should not have been in the NHL probably playing. Now, there was a lot of optimism around this particular player in the preseason that he could be the guy that develops and takes over in Colorado. He's not quite there yet. I think it's also safe to assume that on paper, you could make the case that Annunen is bigger, younger, better, and cheaper than Scott Wedgewood. And if you are all of those things, or even just two of those things, you have to make the trade in which you acquire an asset, get cheaper, get younger, and maybe even get better. And if you are telling me that Justus Annunen is younger, better, and cheaper than Scott Wedgewood, I think that is a great framework with which to view Barry Trotz's motivation moving forward on all things. Maybe I'm connecting too many dots here. But if you are in this current situation for the Predators, and you are Barry Trotz, and you are watching this team, the only options you have are to get better or to get younger and move pieces that are old. Those are your options. And so I think this is representative of where Barry Trotz's head is at, looking outward at the NHL, looking inward at his team. I think this was not part of his plan, but it was presented to him, and it was a good opportunity, and he took it, and I think it was a shrewd move. But I do think it's okay to project the motivation for this trade towards anything else that could happen with the team. You got to get better, or you got to get younger, or you got to get cheaper. And those are the three things I think they did with Annunen versus. Now, I don't think he's ready to be an NHL goaltender yet.
But they don't need him to be right now.
Exactly.
And that's the thing, is that, like, you have to, like you said, better, younger, cheaper. Even though on paper this was not a big splashy trade, these are the kinds of trades that GMs are paid to make. Like, these are the ones where you have to look at the potential for not just right now, but for a couple years down the line. And these are the ones that, they're not going to, hit you in the face and be like, oh my gosh, yes, we have to make this trade. Like, these are the ones that GMs have to make. And I agree with you. I think that it's, it was a very smart move, honestly, by both teams. But I agree with you that this was more about satisfying an immediate need for Colorado. But it also happens to benefit Nashville long-term, in theory. Yep. And I think it's also a reminder. Again, I go back to the Askarov trade. I think that you need to, it's a reminder that not every trade, or really no trades, no moves, no anything, can be viewed in a vacuum, because this is still part of the fallout from the Askarov trade. People looked at the trade in a vacuum and said, this isn't good. This isn't enough. It's like, well, no, that alone it wasn't enough. But now he's making, future moves here to kind of fill those holes that he may have created by trading Askarov. And so I think that this is, again, it's part of how they look at, GMs have to look at things in like multi-year chunks.
Yep. I also think it's fair to assume that Colorado knows a lot about Scott Wedgewood, considering where he's played recently. That being said, I did look up his split stats against Colorado, which is fascinating. Almost a 4.0 goals allowed.
but
Colorado knows him, so.
His first game with Colorado last night, unsurprisingly, came in relief of Alexander Georgiev, because he allowed like 4 goals on 8 shots or something like that. And then Colorado came back to win that game 5-4. They scored, it was 4-0, I think, Buffalo. They came and scored 5 unanswered. Wedgewood made 22 saves. So basically a mini shutout for him, because he didn't play the whole game, but he was, he kept Buffalo from scoring anymore. And so, yeah.
So a Predator going to the list, going to another team and doing well.
I was just going to say, add him to the list.
I think common sense says that UC Saros starts against Toronto tonight, and that Annunen starts tomorrow. I think it should be the other way around. I think you throw him to the Wolves and you say, look, there's a good chance we're not going to win this game anyway. Take the L and then try to guarantee yourself 2 points against Montreal because they're so bad. And Saros should give you a very good chance to win that game. I know that's not how hockey works. A lot of times you beat the good team and you lose to the bad one, and that's just sometimes how it works. But I could actually make the case for the other way around, is to throw him to the Wolves against Toronto with Austin Matthews now back healthy after changing his blood in Europe, and then go to and then just give your dominant Vezina caliber guy a chance to beat a bad team in Montreal with like 4 days of rest or whatever. So I don't know. I see it both ways. So we'll see what happens. I will say this.
Team, nothing surprises me anymore. So either outcome could be the case. And I'd be like, sure.
I will say this. The young Finnish goaltender, Juice, which is going to have to change his nickname probably.
Big Juice.
Head spinning right now. Head is spinning. Just as a human, it's a human situation. Like, he's never been like traded inside of an organization mid-season in the NHL to go to another organization on a new team. Like, just like trying to get situated, trying to learn what's going on. Because I asked him a question about sort of what's his strategy coming into a new organization and a new city, and he gave a good answer. But it's like, it's clear that at that age, in a country it's not your home country, like, this is just a professional level. He's probably a little ahead of timeline. He probably should still be in the minors at some point. But we'll see. I think
such a different situation for him. And for sure, like a 24-year-old kid, yes, of course your head's spinning. But I also think that he's got to know how much pressure this lifts off of him, because there is no expectation for him to be the guy in Nashville like there was in Colorado. So
what kind of tribute video Scott Wedgewood get coming back?
I don't know. They forgot about Ryan McDonough till the third period, so I don't know.
God, the game ops, man. Good night.
It's bad. It's so bad.
No, we're not. We're gonna lose, Kevin. We're not. Nobody gets overtime pay for an extra few minutes of podcasting.
I like Kevin.
Kevin's good. Yeah, he's the one talking about your wisdom all the time.
I know. That's why I like him.
And going to the dentist. Mr. Lingan, all that good stuff. All right. Nash says, just popping in to say I appreciate the show, and we'll start from the beginning on my lunch break. There you go. Well, we do appreciate you guys. Here's what I would say. Go read the story about Josi. Make sure you're reading Emma's stuff all over the internet. But you guys are ambassadors for Lower Broad Hockey, and I love doing the work that I got to do this week, where you go in and you talk to a player about something other than how to like win games. It's like how you get to know these players, and it's my favorite part of the job. And if we, the more you guys as ambassadors of Lower Broad Hockey can get other folks signed up, that's as far as sort of the entire organization will go. So you guys have as much agency in all of this as we do. So please do your part and invite as many Preds fans as possible into the organization, into the plan, into the community. And we would really appreciate it as the more you invest, the more time we can invest in trying to give you better content, better work, more thoughtful stuff, and hopefully make you guys the most informed Preds fans out there. Sinkers Beverages as well. Your only liquor store in Nashville, 4-time liquor store of the year. Search Uber Eats for Sinkers Beverages, and they will send the booze directly to your house or your party. I don't know if you want to send it to your office, but I guess you could try. I don't know. And of course, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, open 11 to 3. Right there in sort of Madison off Briley Parkway, right there north of East Nashville. It is a fantastic, fantastic barbecue joint, best brisket in the city. So go support good local businesses as well. It's just Emma Lingan on Blue Sky. Are you going to skeet anytime soon?
Probably not, but I mean, it's there. A lot of people have followed me, but I don't know why, because I'm not skeeting.
Well, if you would like people to read your links, post them on Blue Sky, because links work on Blue Sky. They don't work on Twitter.
What do you mean they don't work on
Twitter? They get throttled by the machine. Twitter doesn't want you to leave Twitter. That's against their financial interests. That's why it kind of, there's other reasons it sucks, and it has nothing to do with the guy who owns it. It has everything to do with the people who are on it. Love all you guys. Follow us on all the social media apps and subscribe. We do appreciate it. All right. That does it. You guys have a great day. Have a great week. We'll see what happens tonight and the rest of the week, but we'll be back. Emma's got your newsletter on Friday. We'll be back on Monday with Adam and I, and then back live every single Wednesday at 10 a.m. across all platforms. Thank you for listening. For Emma, I am Braden. We appreciate you guys. Have a good weekend, everybody. Peace and love.